Hello everybody and welcome to another board game discussion video all about house rules. Before I really get started, if you haven't done so already, please take a look at all of my various social media pages as well as my Patreon page. On all of those you'll be able to interact with myself as well as my channel in a whole bunch of really fun and unique and interesting ways. That said, moving right into today's topic of house rules. This is an interesting thing that I'm mostly curious what you guys have to say about. And what do I mean by this? I mean little alterations to board games that we make in order to have things happen a little bit more smoothly or have them make more sense and this kind of thing. Now, I'm not talking about redesigning games entirely. I'm just talking about little tweaks that make things happen better or more efficiently or something along those lines. And mostly what I wanted to discuss was, where is that line between I'm making this game better and more efficient, and this is now a new game. So the first thing that I wanted to mention is one of my personal favorites, actually. I don't know if you heard that, but one of my personal favorites, Evolution. So Evolution, during this game, during one of the phases, you are picking traits to modify your individual species. Now, technically the rules state that you are supposed to do those in turn order. And that's fine, you know, like whatever. But at the same time, if you're playing with a whole lot of people, it can really bog the game down and you can have a lot of analysis paralysis. So one house rule that I normally play with is everybody does it simultaneously. In general, it doesn't affect what other people are going to do. Like what I choose isn't going to affect what you do necessarily. That said, we always have the sort of addendum to the house rule that says, if you want, then you can request that we do it in turn order. This is especially true or especially important if you have like multiple carnivores and potentially some of them are getting stronger or weaker and things along those lines. So it can make a difference, but by and large it really doesn't, and it really helps to not bog the game down. But again, we don't change the fundamental aspect of how the game functions or how it works. There are certain house rules that do that, and that was the other example that I wanted to mention here, the rather infamous example of Monopoly. Monopoly has been done to death when it comes to house ruling. There's all sorts of stuff that have changed and been lost and forgotten and found and all that kind of thing all over the place. One key rule that a lot of people tend not to play with, for example, is that you're supposed to auction off properties that are not purchased by the person who lands on top of them. In addition, we have the very infamous free parking rule, where you put any money from taxes and stuff in the middle of the board, and if somebody lands on free parking, then they get all of that money. It's a relatively common house rule. I've seen a lot, especially when I was a kid, but the thing is, it kind of breaks the game. It really ruins the economy of what's going on within the game. And same thing for the auction, is that tends to make the game drag on a lot more if you don't play it with that. And in the end, that might be more just because you're not really reading the rules, so you don't know exactly what you're supposed to do. But at the same time, with both of these games, house ruling this stuff drastically changes how they play. In the case of Evolution, it reduces the amount of time significantly because you don't have everybody taking their individual turn putting out their traits. And while that might not change the end outcome, it does mean that you can play more games, which is always fun. For Monopoly, it really changes the fundamental way of how the game functions and how the economy is balanced. And so it drastically alters what's going on here. And again, I wanted to really discuss where that particular line is, because there's a lot of games where you can do stuff similar to Evolution where things aren't necessarily meant to happen simultaneously, but you make them happen simultaneously so that you can do something a little bit more efficiently. And a lot of that comes down to like card playing and things of that nature. But at the same time, there are occasions where it's really important that you make sure things go in order. One great example of this are games like, for example, like Race for the Galaxy or Citadels and things like this, where you're going to be building up tableaus. And so you might say, I'm just going to be building something, and then you go off and you do it, and then other people can go and do whatever the thing was that they were going to do. Whatever you're building, whatever you're doing, probably won't affect the next player. So it's kind of nice to be able to do that and just sort of have your own little thing going on so that you can finish it, and then everybody else can, or the next person can focus on whatever it is that they happen to be doing. So it makes it a little bit more efficient like that. And there are several times where you see the simultaneous one, and I think that's the one that tends to break the rules the least. But then there are other ones where the rules are just kind of bad, like whether they're badly written or they just don't make sense, or you just need to make some kind of adjustment, especially to like starting materials and stuff like that. So a good example of bad rules is in Robinson Crusoe, the first edition. Horribly written rules, absolutely awful, really made for no fun. And it was kind of frustrating, and so it comes down to you read through and you make the best that you can, and sometimes you have to interpret what the authors meant. And so it's kind of weird, because when do you consider a core mechanic, fully changed? And I honestly don't have an answer for it, and that's why I'm really curious what you guys have to say. What do you think about changing the mechanics, changing the role of the game? Do you think it changes the game too fundamentally to the point where it's no longer that particular game, or it's a completely different experience altogether? I'm really curious where you guys draw that particular line. And like, for me, again, if it makes the game more efficient and more fun for everybody, that's fine, let's do it. But then if it fundamentally changes how the game functions and how the mechanics fit in with one another, that's an issue, and I believe that we are now not playing in the spirit of the game. And so, yeah, I think that's more than enough ranting and raving from me. I hope that you guys enjoyed this little discussion video. Again, I look forward to really hearing what you all have to say about it, so please put any and all thoughts into the comments below. You guys know I love to hear from you. But that said, thank you very much again for watching, and I will see you next time.